All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a topic that is just loaded with centuries of myth and misunderstanding, the hymen. We're going to separate all that cultural belief from the straight-up biological facts using science as our guide.
So this is the big question, right? For so long, the state of the hymen has been used as a kind of test for a person's sexual history. But is there actually any medical or scientific basis for that? That's exactly what we're here to figure out.
You know, it's pretty wild when you think about it. Across so many different cultures for hundreds of years, this one tiny piece of tissue has been given this incredible symbolic weight. It's been treated like a physical guarantee of purity or virginity, and that belief has had some really profound consequences. But the thing is, this whole idea is based on a massive misunderstanding of basic anatomy.
Okay, so to get to the truth, we have to start with the science. Let's break down what the hymen actually is, what it's made of, and, what its biological purpose really is. Let's just forget the myths for a second and look at the facts.
First things first, where is it? Well, the hymen is a thin membrane of what's called mucosal tissue. And what's really important to get is that it's not some deep internal organ. It's actually part of the external female genitalia, the vulva, and it's located right at the external opening of the vagina. Now, what this tissue is made of is super interesting and kind of key to this whole conversation. It's connective tissue, but it's rich in elastic fibers. That word right there, elastic, is everything. This isn't some rigid, fragile barrier. By its very nature, it's a flexible, stretchy tissue.
And here we go. This is maybe the single most important mythbuster we're going to talk about. The hymen does not and is not supposed to seal the vaginal opening. A typical, healthy hymen is perforated. All that means is it has an opening in it from birth. So that whole idea of it being some kind of unbroken seal, it's just medically inaccurate.
So why does it have to have an opening? Well, for really basic, essential biological functions. That opening is there to let normal vaginal secretions out, and once puberty starts, it's the pathway for menstrual blood to leave the body. An unbroken seal would actually be a medical problem that needs to be fixed.
All right, let's move on. Because not only is the hymen not a seal, but it also doesn't just come in one standard issue model. The idea that there's one single intact look is another myth we've got to tackle.
This is such a crucial point. When it comes to hymenal anatomy, variety is the absolute norm. It's the rule, not the exception. So instead of one correct look, what medical science actually shows us is a whole spectrum of perfectly normal shapes and sizes.
So what's the most common shape? It's called an annular hymen. And a really easy way to picture it is like a ring, or maybe a donut of tissue, that goes around the vaginal opening, leaving a pretty clear hole right in the center.
The next most common type is the crescent hymen. Just like it sounds, the tissue kind of covers the bottom part of the vaginal opening, leaving the top part open in a shape that looks, well, like a half moon. And again, this is completely normal.
And this just shows how much diversity there can be. You can have a septate hymen, which has a little band of tissue down the middle, making two openings, or a cribriform hymen, which is pretty rare, that has lots of tiny little holes, almost like a sieve. And then there's a microperforate hymen, with just one really small opening. All of these are just natural variations of the human body.
Now, while all that variety is perfectly normal, there are some very rare cases where the anatomy can cause actual medical problems. But it's so important to see these as what they are: treatable conditions, not some kind of personal flaw or defect.
And I mean, really, we're talking about very rare congenital conditions, meaning someone's born with it. When these do pop up, they are almost always resolved with a really straightforward minor medical procedure.
This table lays it out nice and clearly. You have an imperforate hymen. That's the rare situation where the tissue does completely cover the opening. That's a problem because it blocks menstrual flow and it requires a procedure called a hymenectomy. Then there's a rigid hymen, which is just one that's unusually inflexible and doesn't stretch. That can be treated with a hymenotomy.
So what's a hymenectomy? It's simply a minor surgery to remove that extra or obstructive tissue. It's the standard way to fix these rare conditions and just allow the body to function normally. It's considered a minor surgery.
Okay, so we've looked at the anatomy, the huge diversity of shapes, and the rare medical exceptions. Let's bring it all together. Let's put that persistent cultural myth right next to the clear medical reality.
Here it is, side by side. The myth says it's a seal that breaks and that its appearance is proof of virginity. But the medical fact?
It's a flexible, stretchy, and naturally open membrane. Its shape is incredibly diverse from person to person, and on top of that, it can change over time due to hormones, sports, using tampons, or, yes, sexual intercourse.
So here's the absolute bottom line, the most important takeaway from all of this. There is no such thing as a virgin appearance of the hymen. A doctor cannot look at this tissue and determine someone's sexual history. It's just not a reliable indicator of anything other than that person's unique individual anatomy.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? For centuries, this tissue has been given an outsized symbolic significance, a meaning that is totally predicated on two fundamental but medically inaccurate myths: the myth that it's a seal and the myth that it breaks. Science tells us a completely different and more accurate story. And that really leaves us with a question. When the science is so clear, why on earth does the myth persist?